And now we're live. Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're here. This is Extra Connections Race Talk. We do once a month. I am James Lott Jr. My partner in all things racial equality, Jared Karol. Hi, Jared.
Hi, everyone. I'm so racially equal that I'm gonna have a beer while we do this.
Yeah, I'll do it. I almost have a drink right now, but I didn't realize we were drinking. I was like, I like that.
You remember the Beastie Boys smoking and drinking on a Tuesday night?
Yes.
So I'm not smoking anything, but I'm getting ahead of them by one night. I'm gonna be drinking on a Monday night. So
I support you drinking. I support anyone drinking. That's fine to me. So yeah, we're here tonight, folks. That means what's going to come out of our mouths. Just kidding. We're here tonight. It's our annual race talk here for JLJ Media. Whilst you are here, make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share the channel, tell people about us. Please tell about me. Tell us about us. And also, we have an announcement later in the show. That's something that we are working on. Hi, GH fans. People are in the chat already. Perfect. I was going to say, the chat is open. So please talk and chat with us. Tell us what you think while we're in the chat room. And let us know. We have other episodes. We do this for a year and a half or so. So check those out. They're on the YouTube channel. And they're also audio. So I don't want to forget. Hi, audio listeners. We enjoy you also. You're very important to the organization. So we don't want to forget you guys and gals and everybody. I'm going to read my famous lists or infamous list. I don't know if it's famous or infamous. I don't know. And what's going to happen is we have several things to talk about. Because this show, we talk about a little bit of everything when it comes to anything, race or whatever related. So if I can learn how to spell really quick, there we go. Hi, Beauty Frashes. They're saying hi to us. Hello, yes, he is here. Jared is here and ready. We are here and we're going to have a good time. So let me get my list out.
I'm eagerly waiting. I've got my blank page.
Yes, there you go.
I'm going to write probably 2 or 3 things down, and then I'm going to stop writing, and I'll probably write 1 or 2 later. That's how it always goes.
Yes, and he hasn't have a list of his own yet. One day, maybe when we have our last show, he'll be like, I have a list.
These are all the things I didn't say for the last 17 years.
That'd be hilarious. That'd actually be hilarious. Here we go. So here comes, my phone is on silent. Good. Okay, here comes the list. Here we go. Everybody ready? Curtis Blow, Grandmaster Flash, Melly Mel, DJ Cool Herc, Big Daddy Kane, Run DMC, Blondie, The Beastie Boys, Brooke Shields, the Cable Ace Awards, SoapNet, Playmakers, the TV series, Sex and the City, Girlfriends, Everybody Hates Chris, Grand Crew, the TV show, Primo, the TV show, Blue Beetle, the new Marvel film, or is it DC? I don't know what it is. Iggy Azalea, Ariana Grande, Angela Martinez, My So-Called Life, the TV show, Michael Eric Dyson, Teray, so I might say it now, I wrote this list differently, the late submarine billionaires. They just passed away. The new Bachelorette is Black on ABC. The Golden Bachelor. Sasha Calle, the new Supergirl. Nicolas Cage finally as Superman. Dennis Rodman. Ana Navarro. TCM, the Troubled Network. Kim Jong. Shirley Ralph. Tony Braxton. The late Chadwick Boseman. Chiwetel Ejiofor, Gugu Mbatha, Brandy, Michelle Yeoh, Lucy Liu, Otis Redding, the iconic music of 1971, which includes Tapestry by Carole King, What's Going On by Marvin Gaye, All Things Must Pass, the concert for Bangladesh by George Harrison, Joni Mitchell's Blue, and David Bowie's Hunky Dory. The 5 amazing albums in a row by Stevie Wonder. They are Music of My Mind, Talking Book, Inner Visions, Fulfilling His First Finale, and Songs in the Key of Life, which actually is a double album. Kerry Washington, Making Good. Jonathan Majors, Gal Gadot, Christina Ricci, Madonna, Angela Bassett, Mel Brooks, Tina Turner, the musical, which I saw last night, Yvette Nicole Brown, and Swarm, the TV series. That's the list for this time. I always ask him, what are some of the things that struck him?
So I'm reading Dilla Time right now. It's the book about Jay Dilla.
Oh yeah.
And it's kind of a hip hop history biography slash almost like an instructional book on how to program beats, and of course there's all kinds of references in it, of course in the 90s and early 2000s, which is when he was around. He died in 2006, I think, but of course it references from way back. So I think I don't know if it was the very first name you said, but it was near the beginning, was DJ Kool Herc.
Yes.
Who is the founder of hip hop.
Yes.
So I thought that was a cool place to start, especially given that I'm reading this. But also in this book, at the very beginning, it talks about, because Jay Dilla was from Detroit,
right, yeah.
and he talks about how Detroit was when it was founded, and then taken away and by these people, then they took it away from these people. All that's kind of North American history, right?
Yes.
They had all these different designs of how the city should look. So they start off with this like kind of cool I've never been to Detroit, but I want to. They had this kind of like triangular thing that could just kind of exponentially go forever and just be these little triangles, and there'd be main streets, but then some white dude came in and said, no, we're not going to do the triangles. We're going to do squares. God damn it. And they made the squares. So now, like, you look at Detroit, it's all fucked up because it's like triangles, squares, this, that, and it's like, and this is what the author was saying, is like, that's capitalism, that's colonialism, that's racism, that's white supremacy. And anyway, that's what I thought of.
Like that.
That's where my mind went from DJ Kool Herc to Jay Dilla to Detroit to racism to here we are.
That's why you are who you are. I love it. I do love it. It's the 50th anniversary of hip hop. So folks at home didn't know this. DJ Kool Herc is considered the person who had the first hip hop party in 1973. So that's how it started. Yes, I was born. I was only 4 years old.
I was -2.
He wasn't even thought of yet.
I was not, probably. But it's interesting, you did say 1971. I'd forgotten that this was the 50 year, but good reminder. Have you read Questlove's book, Music is History?
Yes.
Oh, it's so good. And he was born in 1971.
Yes.
And so his book, for those of you who haven't read it, I think it was published in 21.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So it was kind of 50 years of his life, but of music history, but not just like it's 90% music, but it was also history and politics, and just so good.
Well, he produced a special, 1971, the year that changed music, and that's why it led me to that. It came out this year. It's on a streaming service near you. Folks who don't streaming, then you can't get it. So it's funny you say that. So yes, it's we're talking Grammy and Oscar winner Questlove.
And he's mentioned very, very frequently in this Jay Dilla book, because
sure he is
one of the people. Actually, it's a cool story. At the beginning, must have been 94 or 5 something. Jay Dilla had programmed a beat. I can't remember who it was. Farside, maybe. It was in LA, I think. And Questlove was leaving the gig to go to another gig. And he's in the limo or whatever, and he said, wait a second, and he hears this beat, and he's like, what is that beat? And he's like, wait, hold on a second, we got to go back. And it turns out it was Jay Dilla who had programmed that beat. And Dilla's, it's just very, I'm talking about it as if I'm an expert. I have no idea how to do any of this shit, but when you listen to it, it's just it's genius. So Questlove immediately became a fan, like, who is this kid? And then, later he worked with Tribe Called Quest and Common and, everyone. And so anyway.
This is the first time you and I have ever talked culture, so I'm very happy about this. I mean, I know all the stories, so I mean, for me, I know all of it, but like for you, when it comes to culture side of things, you're like, I don't know that much because you're more on the other side of things. Like you don't watch a lot of TV and stuff, so I'm like, this is very cool that you're actually speaking something that I know about. I love it.
Well, I know you're right. I don't know a lot of pop culture.
Right. I'm sorry. That's what I meant. Pop culture.
But music, I like to say I'm a kind of amateur ethnomusicologist.
You're a musician.
I'm a musician, and I appreciate, the musicality of things, but I also appreciate the history of music, and not only musically how it's evolved and been adapted and borrowed from each other and merged, but like what we talk about, the racial stuff, the economic stuff, the appropriation stuff, all the stuff that goes along with music for good or for bad.
Yes, but we've never really talked about it before, so I kind of like that. We talked music when you like on another show about you doing music. I do music. It's like I know this is very cool. I mean, I'm saying we're speaking something where I know about it, you are learning about it. So it's the same, it's the same. I know about him. I know all this. I know all this stuff. So it's like we actually can have a conversation about it. I love it.
Yeah,
I do. I love it. So I'm saying, just acknowledging we have something in common pop culturally that we can actually talk about.
I like the acknowledgement.
Yes.
Not to be confused with one of the movements from A Love Supreme.
Yes.
Yeah, I can bring the shit in.
I love it. I'm very happy. It makes me very happy. I love it. We're gonna go there in a second, but first I want to do a shout out also. A new book called A Daughter's Love: A Notebook for Girl Dads. One of the things that's right. She has this. Okay, so make sure I say her name first. India Germain Amethyst has a series of books where these are notebooks, and they have different themes. But her purpose is to have on the cover people that look like her. So check it out on Amazon. All the images on every cover book is like it's Black people in various ways, and you'll see enough of that on notebooks. And something like notebooks. Like who thinks I have a million notebooks. I write things down all the time, but that someone thought of something like this, I thought was very cool. You have a notebook, yeah?
Yeah, I'm a notebook kind of guy.
Me too. So I thought it was very cool. But her, so you can find. I'll put stuff in the description. I'll give a shout out to her, and also want to give a shout out again to the WGA. We do support them. It is now going on the 9th week of the strike. And Los Angeles has made a declaration. There will be no filming in Los Angeles proper until the strike is finished. And this is the last week. If SAG-AFTRA does not come to an agreement, they will be going on strike also. So this is tough for me and my colleagues and my friends who are not working, who are striking every day, Monday through Friday, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. My heart, this is all races, all colors, all ages, all everything. I just want to make sure I continue to support you as much as I can, especially bring it out in the open. Yeah, it's insane. Half my work is falling apart because we can't do it. So, but everybody should have a nice living wage and good health care. It's one thing we can all agree
on. I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, wouldn't that be communism, James?
Oh, I love it. You get the bell for that. You get the bell for that. I love it. That's a good one. I like that. Oh, these people. So so you mentioned music, and I do want to bring this up a little bit. Besides, so part of the list, I will explain part of it. One of it is some of these folks are getting honorary Oscars. Some of these folks were announced to get stars in the Hollywood Walk of Fame next year. Also, Dennis Rodman wore a plaid skirt to Pride. So it's a big deal that he wore. And Dennis Rodman, we know, he's married himself. Back in the day, he's gender bend a million times, they call stuff. And also, the new Bachelorette is Black. So there's a big thing about that. And TCM is falling apart. There's Turner Classic Movies. Apparently, this quiet institution of classic movies is going to be. Also, we're about to celebrate 4th of July, which is a crazy thing for us Americans, the whole thing about that. And the last thing is, there's been a bunch of things about gaslighting, erasure, and whataboutism. All kinds of the juicy things that Jared and I love every week. That's what's going on also. And Jared turned a year older also in the last month. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you. I'm entering. I don't know. I saw some meme that said like it was a torso of a guy. You could tell he was a guy. You couldn't see his face, but he had like a beard, so you could just kind of see from like here down. And he had a shirt and it said, "It's weird to be the same age as old people." And I I saw that the guys in my band, who are all older than me, by the way.
Oh, how funny.
They sent that to me. I'm like, not to me, like, me attack,
Yeah.
but haha, old guy humor. I'm like, I'm not. Oh, wait, I am old now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. My mother said that before my stepfather died, they used to drive, and they would yell at old drivers until he realized, wait a minute, we're old people too. And they start laughing. May he rest in peace. Okay, so I want to start out with. I mentioned some of these top albums of 1971. I mentioned Stevie Wonder's albums. Everything that I talked about, that I mentioned in the list, are considered classic, iconic albums that tackled race and tackled gender and tackled evolution, equality, the world view. A lot of these, especially, Tapestry was the biggest selling album by a female for like 100 years until I think it was Mariah Carey might have beat it, but she had the biggest song. I mean, she was this female who wrote her own songs, played the piano, sang, did this whole thing. It was huge. Marvin Gaye, of course, What's Going On, considered the landmark album of 1971 by many lists. When I hear it, the stuff he's talking about is still happening today, which is crazy because it's 52 years later. 52 years later. It's still happening. George Harrison's album was the first concert for Relief of Someplace album. It was the first charity concert album. Bangladesh was newly formed out of another place, and it was a whole thing about getting his friends together, put his concert on. So that was the first. It was a huge success. Plus, he was an ex-Beatle. That was his first big thing. And then, of course, Joni Mitchell and David Bowie. I do have to even go on about them. I mean, there's a million things we can say about each of them, what their influence was on music. Prince personally said Joni Mitchell's Blue inspired him as a musician, period. David Bowie, I mean, where can we go with that? And then, of course, Stevie Wonder, his stuff, he talked about everything, living in a city and all this stuff, all these things I wish, all these songs that talked about life as a Black man. He was blind, but was a genius. And also, him and his engineers created and changed the face of music, actually, the actual music. But a lot of their topics, again, still are unfortunately relevant today. So I just kind of want to start with this kind of thing of where, how far have we come and how far haven't we come, which is kind of the sad parts that people aren't actually talking about these days. Like, how far have we come? And I was curious for you, Jared Karol, does any of that play in for you in some of your work and stuff? There you go, stand from the beginning. There you go. Mm-hmm.
So he's not the first one. I think this was written 16, so 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
And so there's that.
Oh, at home, show me some books. At home, show me some books. There's right people. Yes, I've heard that one.
So they're both similar in that they're kind of a chronicling of whiteness and racism and racist ideas and everything. But what Ibram Kendi says, and when I read that several years ago, I was like, oh yeah. And he just made it so clear that whenever there's progress, whatever it is, racial, gender, sexual orientation, anything, whenever there's progress, there's always, without exception, backlash.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and it could be a small thing or it could be a big thing. And if you look at history, any given day, June 26, 2023, any topic, any issue, any incident, there's going to be something where we're like, hey, we're making progress. But there's also going to be something like, oh yeah, we just lost that. We just went backwards. And so I've since then, 4 or 5 years since I read that, that's been kind of my framework. And it's disappointing, actually. And it's gotten me thinking more about, all right, how do we, when I say we, people who care about this stuff, who care about progress and justice and equity and all the things that we do care about, how do we not play the game, not play PR, not tamp down our message, but how do we really think about how we tip that so the progress is more than the regress? Because I think right now, overall, if I was to kind of weight like a pendulum, we've talked about the pendulum before, I think we're on a backswing, I feel like. And it's hard to know. I'm not a historian, I'm not an economist. It's hard to know, like, is it just a temporary thing and we're going to push through that in a month or a year, we're going to be way out here? I don't know. But that's kind of where I'm at. And I think, so you say, hey, 1971, Stevie Wonder, David Bowie, George Harrison, like, same thing. I mean, I don't know all the history, year by year, day by day music, but, mid 70s, like the backlash against disco, if someone smarter than me could really chronicle it, the ups and downs. In fact, that'd be a fascinating book, I think. I'm not volunteering to write it, but someone out there, write it. So that's my that's my treatise. I'm stepping down from my soapbox now. That was how I chose to answer your invitation into the conversation. So thank you.
I accept all ways you enter my conversation. The thing that for me, that's the juxtaposition of the manifestation of that scenario of gaining something, losing something. And I remember, I will never forget it for the rest of my life. The night Obama was elected president of our country, of America, but then also the Marriage Equality Act passed in California.
Prop 8.
I was in Prop 8, yes. I was in Bismarck, North Dakota, running a agriculture conference, and with a bunch of farmers and hunters. Folks, the next stop is Canada. I was the only person of color for miles around, for hundreds of miles around. My colleague was white, and we were there doing registrations next morning. And for me, I cried when I saw Obama win. I never thought in my complete lifetime I'd ever see a black man as president. I just never thought. I thought it was possible at some point. And that was something that I shared with my brother who's black, and my cousins who are black, and at that time, he was like 80-year-old stepdad who picked cotton before he went to school. We had to share that with him. We had to live to see that. Like, it was just something, there was a shared experience that I will never forget also. But then there's the other side of me that has to deal with this other thing. And I'm like, I don't even want to get married. Like, screw that noise. But I want the right to not get married. That was always my thing, if you get my drift. And so I was heartbroken. And I have my own feelings about, I think it was worded weirdly. So I think some people thought they were voting. I just have a whole story about that. But I just thought, that's what you said, the whole gain, lose. I agree with that completely. And that's just one example of where there was a high, but then for a segment of us who are still othered in other ways, it was a low. And to me, it was a low for the country also. It's all American politics, American history, no matter what side you fall on. And to me, it was still a sense. So yeah, I agree with you. I think, we've seen that so many times. And again, he brought up disco, and I was there for that backlash. And there's a hip hop backlash for a while too. But the gangster rap stuff, they were getting upset about that. And there's all kinds. So you're right. There's and then then the Hispanic world was growing. All of a sudden, there's backlash against that. You're right. There's all kinds of backlashes that happen to take us 10 steps back after we made our 12 steps forward.
Yeah. I've talked about this enough on the show that I'm Buddhist. I believe in the philosophy than the spirituality or the religious part of it. But this idea, and I'm going to borrow like an ancient Chinese idea to kind of flow into this, the yin yang, right? That there's like these opposing forces. People think so here's my drawing.
You choose something for us, folks. Okay.
right?
Suffering, joy. I like it.
Right. So when you were just explaining, this, like, you cried and your family and your brother and, but then the backlash and, like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Right. Like, that's like, joy and suffering, and they're not opposites. They're they're needed. They're complementary forces. There's Buddhism is, there's first noble truth is there's suffering, period. It's a two word sentence. There's suffering, or three, because it's a contraction. There is suffering, right? Period. We all suffer, right? But so how do we, whoever we are, individually, collectively, communally, how do we find joy in the midst of suffering? And I think that's something that, you hear people talk about, wellness and it's easy to mock them because they're often kind of, especially in corporate spaces. It's like, oh, great, we have an hour of yoga a month, that's supposed to, like, take care of everything. It's like, but really, how do we find joy in whatever that is? Community, friends, whatever our things are. Not like, we're never going to get to, like, okay, as soon as I get done with all this suffering and we get to the finish line, then I'll enjoy myself. No, like, it's never going to happen. Right. So I've been reading a lot of stuff the last couple years, really, around that. What does healing look like individually and collectively? What does it mean, for you as a Black man, me as a white man? And what does healing look like? How is it similar? How is it different? How do we support each other, etc.? Because there are always going to be people who, I can't say I cried when Obama won, but I was very happy. But then there are people like, fuck that N-word, right? And immediately. And so then we know, 8 years later, Trump, and, so it's like, it's
That was
always
the other thing too. I had to hear those things in front of me in North Dakota.
exactly right.
And I had to be quiet and pass out the registration packets to bigots. And I had to grin and bear that, which is something that Black folks have done for hundreds of years also.
Well, yeah, and to get back to, to the music thing that you started with,
Yes.
DJ Kool Herc, Black man. I mean, obviously, I didn't write down all the people, but Lott, Stevie Wonder, right? Marvin Gaye.
Right.
And then, you have people, obviously David Bowie's not a Black person. Carole King is very much not a Black person. Joni Mitchell, but I'd like to think they got it in some way. And so I've been kind of steering away from the term ally. I think it's a little watered down and a little kind of just but they were communists, right? But they were, they were on the right side, trying to keep this back and forth, maybe from swinging a little less heavily.
Well, we've talked about David Bowie. I mean, there's clips out there of him.
Oh, one of my favorite clips is him with Mark Goodman, yes. Yep. From like what, 80, 83, 84?
Yes, like that, yeah.
It's like MTV was a couple years old, and it's just the look, he's like, oh, really interesting.
But there's more stories that are coming out of him. Now, obviously, he married a Black woman, Iman, and heck, everybody. No, but there's stories of him throughout life with certain other Black artists. He really supported them. It was just like Tina Turner, like that. I just saw the musicals, like he was instrumental in that. So it's like, it's funny that there were people, and Joni Mitchell, that they were all fighting for. There was that whole freedom stuff too. There was a whole thing that was going on in the late 60s, early 70s. A lot of folk music and stuff that was going on there too. Folks always are shocked when they hear that Neil Young and Rick James were in a group together called Minor Birds back in the 60s. And I was like, well, why are you surprised? Rick James actually was a brilliant musician and songwriter. He went funk rock later, but it was like, no, we were the same. We were all hippies. It was folk music. People, I'm like, why am I so surprised? And they were in a band together.
Well, what? I'm glad you brought that in, because as a musician and as a fan of music and tons of genres, I mean, I play reggae, but when I first started, I was like kind of, acoustic blues, singer-songwriter stuff, which are about as, in many ways as far apart as you can get. But to me, when you, and I would assume you're in this position too, James, because you know music, you like music, you listen to music. Good music is good music.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, my dad was 15 in 1964, and he saw Bob Dylan playing solo at a concert hall in Philadelphia. Like just him and a guitar and a harmonica playing Times Are Changing, and you know, just all those early protest songs that were, I mean, I still listen to them today. I'm like sometimes I'll cry like listening to those songs, you know? And so Bob Dylan, Stevie Wonder, you know, different genres, but good music is good music. Good mind is good mind. Good, you know what I'm saying? So I think, you know, you and I understand that. I think a lot of people do understand that, but some people don't.
Yeah, when I tell people that my parents were hippies, so when I grew up from the womb, we're listening to Donovan and Bob Dylan. She loved John Wesley Harding. That was her album.
Oh yeah, it's a great album.
Album 1700 by Peter, Paul, and Mary. I mean, I know these albums by heart. Like I grew up with them by heart. At the same time, it was the Supremes and the Motown. So like it was still, and if you think about it, there was these through lines between both of them. And then in the late 60s, when Barry Gordy loosened the reins a little bit, you know, Temptations did Ball of Confusion, and they let you know, Marvin Gaye do that album. They let Stevie Wonder. Like there was a whole time, but there were Black Slide and Family Stone was the bridge between the two. Like it was an interracial group, and they did songs that were both. And I think people, I think people don't realize that music was something different. It was different than television, it was different than movies, it was different. It was like music was music. And I think music does something that no other genre of anything does very instantly. You hear the first two chords of something, an immediate feeling happens.
Yep.
You know that, I know that. We're both musicians also. I play something, I feel it immediately when I start playing it. You know, I hear something, I feel it. Like, give me 2 bars. Like, I'm aging myself. There's be a show called Name That Tune. Like, you name that tune in 5 notes. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember? Was that too young for you? Were you too young for that?
There's been so many of those types of shows.
Yeah, 4 years difference. So sometimes we go backwards. It's a little, I can't tell. But Name That Tune was a huge song. I used to watch the show as a kid and go, I didn't know that tune. But to Jared's point, that's something that, you know, it's when you see when you see the Tina Turner thing, she grew up with gospel and stuff, but you don't realize rock and roll was started by, they say Ike Turner, actually, Rock in '88, that Black folks had their hands in country and Western, rhythm and blues, rock. It's when it comes to music, I feel like it should be interchangeable. I mean, everybody just, like you said, if the song is good, if the voice is good, everyone recognizes it. It's just
well, there is that. And I think, so yes, 100% agree. And we know, you know, and there, a lot of it's subjective. So I mean, I'm a music snob, so I am the type of person to say like, no, your music taste sucks. Like I am the type of person who will say that, you know, partly joking, but kind of partly not, you know.
Yes.
Like, you know, sorry, not sorry.
It's good you admit that. It's good you admit that.
But that said, you know, so everything you said is true, right? And I think sometimes when people don't have, for lack of a better way to say it, like good taste, don't have deep taste, don't have like a
there's that.
A deeper understanding or appreciation of genres and history and, you know, et cetera, right? Not even, you don't have to be a musician. I mean, it helps, but you don't have to be. That is where you have, you know, pop stars, and I say pop could be rap, could be rock, could be, you know, alternative, whatever, but, or it could be straight pop, like a Taylor Swift or someone, right? So they're huge, and we can say, they're good or bad, and not really my thing, but then you do get into like the appropriation stuff. So then it's like, okay, is this really good? And that's like one argument, but a side kind of overlapping Venn diagram argument is like, all right, whether it's good or not is one thing, but is it culturally appropriating?
Well,
if it is kind of borrowing, or you know, I'm thinking, for example, like a white hip hop artist or something. That's not like, no, white people should never do hip hop. No, I'm not saying that at all. They should, but how can you tell? How can we be? I don't want to say sure, but how can we tell if it's genuine if there's a genuine appreciation for the origin, for the history, for the, the culture, etc. So that's something I'm always, and are there any, I don't have any like a list of criteria to check off, but that's kind of how I'm looking at things.
Well, I'm piggyback off of that because there's some great examples of what that is. For every Eminem and Beastie Boys who were well revered and their skills were tested and they passed, like they were good at what they did and they told their own stories and there was nothing appropriating about them, especially in my opinion, especially.
You too.
But in many opinions, it's not just me, but out there, obviously, most people, whatever. For every one of those, there's a Vanilla Ice or Macklemore who got much, his song, the 3 songs were huge. I loved it. But when he won Album of the Year Grammy for rap, they turned on him. Everyone, the Black community, everybody turned on him. Like literally, he's now scraping to make hits. Like I was so shocked because I liked the song. Thrift Shop was good, and the Same Love song about the gay people was great, and they were huge. They sold a lot, but for some reason, Black folks felt it was inauthentic. I'm not fully sure exactly. I didn't feel that way myself, but I know some did. But I know Vanilla Ice, especially famously, that was another one too. He made up stories that he was like, in knife fights and stuff. And he was some like white kid from Miami. But that made me laugh. And I liked Ice Ice Baby. I don't care, people. I liked it. It was everywhere. But like Eminem and Beastie Boys, or I guess I mentioned Blondie. Rapture was very revered, and also she name checks Fab Five Freddy, and I was like, he endorsed it. He's in the video. Like for some reason, those worked. Talk about that, actually. Talk about that a little bit. Like, why do you think those worked and these other ones didn't?
You know what it is? So I'm not super, I mean, I know who Macklemore is, but I don't know his music well enough to comment on it. But yeah, Blondie, who comes to mind is The Clash for me.
Yes.
All of them, especially Joe Strummer and Paul Simonon.
Yes.
There's, and I was going to bring this in earlier and I forgot, so I'm glad you kind of reminded me. What, we're talking about the vehicle of music into, I don't know, whatever topic we're, race relations or culture appreciation or whatever kind of bigger topic we're talking about. I know I just personally, less as a musician, well, as a musician too, but just as a person, I feel that I am confident and competent enough to be in this space. And I'm not, do I mess up? Yeah, of course I do. But I'm not really worried about what people think of me because I know that my genuineness for most people will show through and it won't be a problem. There are always going to be people who, no matter what, I'm just a white guy, fronting, blah, blah, blah.
Yes.
You can't do anything about it. For the most part, though, I'm not really worried about it because I trust in my intentionality, my authenticity, my confidence, my competence. So I think when you go back to music, The Clash, Blondie, Bob Dylan, I mean, even though he's a folk singer, but he was writing about, racial stuff.
He was. Yes,
with all those same things, intentionality. Like, I don't care. I'm a 22-year-old white dude from Duluth, Minnesota, but I know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I'm going to sing these songs and they're going to be awesome. And they were, and they still are. So I think there's something like that, whereas maybe like a Vanilla Ice didn't really have that. He, got, who knows I don't know his story, but he got big and maybe made a lot of money. And then everyone's like, nah. Right. So it's like, there's a genuineness that isn't going to be 100%, but it's going to be, 90%. Whereas like Vanilla Ice is like a 20%, like Dylan, 90%, Joe Strummer, 90%, Deborah Harry, 90%, like they know what they're talking about and they're going to do it because they believe in themselves and they believe that what the messages that they're singing is the right thing to do. So I think that's what I'm seeing.
I think part of it is intention. People want to see what your intention is. And you bring up those people. I bring up people like Hall & Oates. I bring up Elton John. Bring up George Michael. I bring up Police and Sting, where their music was I bring up Paul Simon. Their music is very, I mean, Talking Heads, like they range the spectrum, but they got respect though. I mean, I'm growing up for me. It's not me just talking outside my ass.
No.
On Black radio, these folks were played regularly. Boss Scaggs. Also, they were played regularly on Black radio, alongside the Black folks, and white folks, Tina Marie, they loved them. But for some reason, they were able, it was good music. Well, maybe I think it was good music, but somehow it wasn't seen as appropriation.
No, it was. So it's interesting. So, we're just a local, reggae cover band. So it's not like we're Rolling Stones style here, but I've talked to the guys in my band who, and not to, well, I guess it's a little brag, but like, they're not as developed in this area as I am around, race and stuff. That makes me sound like a douchebag. They're not as smart as I am around race.
Well, you're in the business of this.
Exactly. But so they're all like liberals, they all, voted for Biden and all the things. And, and they get it ish, but then there are little things like they don't get. And so I've had some time. We've had texts that are like,
I know you told me one of the things they wanted to do. And you're like,
dread caps. And hey, we're a reggae man. Like, no, we are not fucking do that. If you do, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I love playing this music. It's really a big part of my life. It's important to me, but I will not be part of that. And so we've had some conversations, but then, which is, I feel comfortable enough with them to just say, here's what's up, knowing that it's very unlikely that it's going to happen, that I am going to have to leave the band. Right, but if I had to, I would, right? Yeah. But then it sparks some different conversations, some nuanced conversations, which I enjoy. And one was around like, well, aren't we as white guys, because we're all white guys, aren't we as white guys playing reggae? Isn't that just immediately appropriation? I said, no, because we're doing it with respect. We're good. And we're honoring the music that we're playing, and we're doing something creative with it. Now, if we were all flippant and wearing dread caps and like, yeah, Rasta man, like then that'd be Vanilla Ice. But we're not. We're appreciating the music, and we're playing it, and we're actually bringing it to people who otherwise probably would never listen to reggae.
But also, Jared,
yes,
you have to inform people who may not know this. I didn't know this until later. Jamaica is an island that is, the heavy English influence, heavy Chinese influence. I mean, like it's not people. The image of all the, Jamaicans have 10 jobs, all that kind of stuff. Some of that's true, but all that stuff I talk about all the time. That was more comedy stuff brought on TV and movies. But Jamaica actually has these other histories that are part of. My godson is Jamaican, and I mean, a lot of their first names are Randolph and things like that. I mean, like it's very British. They have tea. I mean, there's a lot of things that go on there. So it's just so you as white dudes playing reggae isn't really that out of pocket than people would think. That reggae is it's a music for everyone who appreciates that life.
Right. Life. Well, that's true. I mean, Bob Marley's dad was an old white dude. So,
yeah, he was white. Yes, I never put it that way before. Yes, he was an old white dude. He was.
I mean, he was a colonist. I don't remember the full story. He was. Yeah. 60 or something, and
I just never heard it put that way before. I love it. Yes, he was no white. Yes, he was.
And he, what was her name? The Miss Jamaica, when he was having an affair with her, she was a white woman. Yeah. Yep. So I know the history, but
folks at home don't know this. I mean,
totally, right. And though reggae, because I've read, because I play it, I'm really interested in the history of it. It came out of a bunch of different Caribbean, music, there was bento and calypso and then a lot of the early, like even before ska, the sound system people, the DJs, who really controlled, because no one had radios, no one had, record players, they couldn't afford them, right? So really you relied on listening to the radio or going to these dances. And so the people who were running them, they were just really competitive. And so like in the early, like late 40s into early 50s, almost all the music was from the US, right? It was all like R&B and right. That stuff, right? And then it kind of in the like late 50s, early 60s, it went into ska and then rocksteady and then reggae. So it really did
dance
hall later in the 80s, right? And so it's like ska, rocksteady, reggae, roots, reggae, and then dancehall, and now it's all kinds of things. But my point is, so yes, and reggae really is it came out of a Black experience of consciousness, and not all reggae artists are Rastas, but
No.
a large part of them. But to your point, the reason why reggae is so, even if you're not a reggae fan, like it's fucking universal music. I mean, who doesn't, not even just Bob Marley, of course, but like you just hear a reggae, you're like,
But here's the thing. No, let's not dismiss Bob Marley that easy, because he is.
I have like six.
No.
Yeah, I love him.
No, I'm saying not you. I meant to say you. We. I mean us, because one of the biggest selling albums of all time is his greatest hits album.
Mhm.
And so, I mean, like literally, it's one of the biggest selling artists, of the world of all time. It's a huge, huge album of his greatest hits. And actually, I think 6 of his songs are off of one of his biggest albums. Like it's completely this thing where he did bring it to the world. Like everybody hears the songs, and I mean, anybody hears them. Everything's gonna be all right. And all these songs, you feel good.
Well, Exodus, which is probably the album you're referring to, was 77, had Get Up, Stand Up, and I forget which songs are on which album, but it was voted by Rolling Stone magazine as the album of the best album of all time.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, from like a rock magazine.
Right. I know. Right.
So, but yes, I mean, we went into a rabbit hole there, which is always fun, but I think it's illuminating to, what we're talking about.
We're talking about race. I mean, the whole thing is music and race, which is something I love talking about. I just think because, when I was coming up, because I'm a few years older than he is, but we're not far off in age. But when you go backwards, things are different when you go backwards. Like when I was in high school, he wasn't in high school, that kind of thing. But when my older cousins started listening to ska and reggae and ska and punk and all that in the early 80s, the Skinny Ties, like I said, with the Jam, the Specials, all that stuff. I remember all that stuff. I have the pins. I have all the pins and everything. And it was something that, the first Bananarama record was actually that weird dance hall.
Well, they were with Fun Boy 3, who were from the Specials.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But all that stuff was a mixture of all of that stuff, and it was also multiracial. And then in the mid 80s they started breaking up, and you got General Public, and you got Fine Young Cannibals. They're still all multiracial, still from England, still from the Caribbean. Then you got the Eddie Grants and the Billy Ocean started coming in. I guess like all this stuff you guys listen to on the radio that's played as I'm sorry to say this to you, Jared, but it's called classic radio now. The 80s joined classic radio. In LA, we have a big station. Little side note, we have a station called KRS 101. It's a famous station here in LA. And I remember the day, because all of my friends who are my age, we called each other. It was like 5 years ago. And now we have joined now the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s. We're like, 80? How long ago was that?
That was 10 years ago.
Right, exactly. And so the 80s in there, but just that's a little side note, funny thing we had to do. But no, all of that, the Rolling Stones had albums that played into that. There's a lot of stuff that people don't realize that are popular songs. I was just like, not quote, they are popular, I'm saying quotes. They're popular songs. The beats, they don't understand where they come from. Something like I said, we're musicians, we know this stuff, but for the average person out there, a lot of it is from these regions of the world, out of these movements that now they're sampling this, sampling that, and
well, and whether any individual musician or band can only play so many different things, right? Like, if you're a hip hop group, you can play some rock, you can play some R&B, you can play, you can do some other things, but you can't. It's not like every single band can play 25 different genres. Like you just can't. But that said, the people who know. So even like Nirvana, I mean, remember when their live MTV Unplugged, right? They're like, yeah, this is one of our favorite. This is a song from one of our favorite artists, Leadbelly. I guarantee you, 90% of the people who heard that and are Nirvana fans, like, who the fuck is Leadbelly? Exactly. And then they go and they're like, oh, he was an old blues folk singer. And, he wrote all these great songs like Goodnight Irene. And, everyone, anyone who's a musician, especially a blues or rock musician, knows who Leadbelly is. So it's like that kind of consciousness that they're, even a band like, Nirvana, yeah. So you listen to Nirvana, it's like, yeah, they're pretty rigid. They're just kind of a grunge band. True, but they get it. Right?
Well, let me start over, because I was devastated when Kurt died. I was a huge Nirvana fan. And much of their sound also came from the Pixies. I was a big Pixies fan. The loud, soft. Actually, I did a song called "Lost and Found." You can find it anywhere. that I copied that, the loud, soft sound.
Mhm.
But my thing is, a lot. This is another racial thing. A lot of American bands, blues, jazz, rock and roll, that didn't have success here in America, overseas, those bands, and those were Tom Jones, Rolling Stones, the Beatles, they all appreciated these people that we didn't appreciate over here because of race crap. They went over there, as I said again, Jared said it, like I said earlier, all these popular songs that you love, they'll say, I was inspired by, they'll name somebody like Muddy Waters or inspired by BB King, like, and you're like, who, what? And many of them did get some success mainstream later because of the recognition. But America, the Motown could go over there, a lot of soul singers, we were like,
Jazz singers.
jazz singers, just like they go to Europe, they go to France, the Scandinavia, my folks in Holland and New York. I mean, they were big over there, and a lot of bands and musicians came up from that. Actually, they sing that way, they play that way, and mess with their own stuff. So, yeah, please go ahead.
No, I mean, we're just
but it's a race thing. In America, it was a race thing. They didn't want it.
I earlier this year, maybe it was last year, I read Dexter Gordon's biography. He was a jazz. So he was in LA. He kind of came up like Charles Mingus and Hampton Hawes and kind of that Central Avenue, which is now South Central, but Central Avenue in the 50s was the place to be on the West Coast, right? So you had, I mean, Charles, like all these guys, then people,
Miles Davis, all of them.
Yeah, they'd come through town, Coltrane, Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker had to because he was, I mean, he was kind of messed up just with drugs and everything. He had to stay in a hospital in LA somewhere for a couple of months while he kind of got his shit together before he went back to New York. But anyway, Dexter Gordon grew up there, and just through just racial profiling and just bullshit, he ended up in prison. And just he was addicted to heroin, but then he got out, and so basically right in the prime of his career, like the mid-50s, he's in jail for like 5 or 6 years, and then he gets out, and he's like, "Yeah, come on back!" Like she's like, "Fuck that, I'm going to Denmark." So he goes to Copenhagen, lives there for like 15 years, and just starts his career, and just is loved, and just does his thing, and he's like, "Yeah, I think." And he did finally come back to the States. I think in 77 or something. He had there was an album called Homecoming, and he came back. And so, but to your point, it's like, man, I mean, we still know him and, listen to him. We know his story and his music, but what might he have done? And not even for our consumption, what music might he have made that he didn't? It's like, what might just his psyche and as a man, as a human, just not to be fucked with, just because he's a jazz musician.
Well, Bobby Womack, another legend that maybe people don't even know who he is, but you'll know some of his songs, had huge success in the 70s, and then went away. He had some issues too, and then went away, whatever. But then went to England, and his brother Cecil Womack, another person, and his wife had a huge song called Teardrops back in the 80s. Like, Teardrops was a really good song, but overseas, it wasn't big here in America. It was big over there. And then Bobby Womack put out his last album. I recommend this to everybody because I love it so much. He was 67 years old, and it was called The Bravest Man in the World.
The Bravest Man in the World?
Yeah. And that title track makes me just it's just, and his gravelly, smoking voice, all 67 years you can hear in the songs. The cover of the album is a little jarring because one of his fingers is bent backwards. It's his hand, and one's bent backwards. I was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. But the album, get past that. But the album itself, but the song, Bravest Man in the World, is my favorite songs of all time, period. But again, it was made by somebody who appreciated him, a younger whippersnapper from somewhere else, who said, you have more music in you. You should put something out. There are guys like Mark Ronson, who, he does, what's his name? Bruno Mars and stuff, but he also does older artists, Prince for a long time, Mavis Staples, Larry Graham was bringing them back into fold, like Chaka Khan. Like, these are people that should be out there putting out music and being revered. People are like, who are these people? Like, they didn't know who they were. And I think but again, a lot of that was race related. And I think, and just going back to the whole music thing, it's just like, it's music. It should be colorless on some level, right? It should be about the song, the message, the experience. That's if it's just a dance song, pop that coochie. That's a song. That's your experience. You're popping that coochie. That's a song. Have a good time. 2 Live Crew. Have a good time. But you're something deeper than that. It should be something that's just about being deeper than that.
Well, I would actually look at it. I think we'd arrive at the same place, but I look at it from a different angle. Rather than, so I think most people, when they listen to a song or an artist, or who listens to albums anymore unless you collect vinyl, but like, you usually know if the artist is Black. Not always, but if they're popular enough. So for me, it's rather than like, so I don't think most people have an issue with listening to Black artists. I think the issue is that they aren't interested in understanding the history like we've been talking about. Not just their personal musical history, but their personal history of like some of the things you've just been sharing, like what it took to get there, what they had to fight through. So like when I read like, jazz biographies or, hip hop biographies, yeah, I'm interested in learning more about that person and their musical, career, but I'm also tuned into and, learning about the specifics and the general things that they and other people like them, whether they're musicians or just other Black folks, had to go through. And then we see them as this great, jazz star, pop star, or hip hop star.
If you could.
And so that's what I would like. I would encourage people to do more. Like, yeah, enjoy the music, awesome, and be curious about more than just the music.
I'm going to partially agree with you and partially disagree.
Okay.
Only because I think, because I'm more tuned into the pop culture thing, with the invention of TikTok, it has come up a lot now. The part that I agree with you is they don't look into the history anymore. They don't give a fuck what the history is. They don't care who the original artist was. They're not looking into all that stuff. It's now clickable moments. It's dance challenges. It's like what song, because songs are, TikTok has changed everything. Like literally, Instagram Reels and Facebook, they're there, but no, it's literally TikTok has changed the way music is sold. And there's a big thing coming up now with Black folks getting pissed because they start a movement or a song, then someone white takes it and it actually gets bigger.
Yep.
And then the next person who's white takes it, and everyone's white, and then somehow it gets watered down. No one, like, to go to your point, goes back and says, well, who did this originally? No one cares. It's just the song now is part of the public, and we're going to appropriate the way we want to and do what we want with it, and that's that. But Black artists are getting upset and saying, wait a minute, but we started this, and now I'm not getting. So I don't know how that's going to work in the future. I don't know how that's going to work for people, because like I said, once it's, as a person who's gone viral and understands this, once it's out of your, like once it's, I could delete the video off the original video. It don't matter, it's too late. It's already been appropriated 800 million times.
Yeah.
And so folks don't be in my bread video. Oh, that's so dumb. But being of my existence. I'll probably die and I'll be like, James Lott Jr., viral from the bread refrigerator video. It's like, it's just crazy. But it's like, but that's, so on one level, I agree with you in the sense that they're not looking, these kids aren't looking for, well, I wonder who did the original version of it. Where that's, no. And there's people my age, well, no, your age too, our age, who are posting videos of like, here's the TikTok song, I've seen a lot of that recently.
Yeah.
Here's the original. And they're doing it in ways that are kind of like your generation versus my generation. They're trying to get funny out of it. But there are folks who are really getting, because of TikTok, because you're right, now it's so watered out. It's like they're not giving the credit where credit is due anymore, because they just don't give a shit.
Yeah, they don't. You're right. I don't know how much we disagree there. I think we might be in pretty.
I kind of agree. I mean, kind of agree. I just think it's.
Well, I think you're right. They don't give a shit, but they sometimes they don't know to give a shit, right? And so, right. I mean, like, so like I look at my kids, like they're twins, they're 14. And, we do our best to educate them about just, not just about music history, but about stuff, right? And they get it, mostly, but they're still 14. And so like my son is, he's a musician, he's more, he like reads the news on his news app. And so he's kind of more like I am, just personality and interest, where my daughter's less so. I mean, she doesn't like not care, but it's just not kind of her thing. And so, you pick any kid, 8, 12, 14, 18, like you're going to have a range of awareness, and you're going to have a range of, parents and other influencers who are helping them understand, not in like a punitive way, or like you need to make sure and the history of every single song you listen to, but like, bringing that awareness into their world. And I'm not on TikTok, so I don't know the ins and outs like you do, but I know the phenomena, of it. And I would put a lot of that in the artists themselves. So I remember there was a story several years ago. I think, what's her name? Is it Addison Rae? She's like one of the TikTok dancers.
That sounds familiar, kind of.
Yeah, she's like a cute, young, really good dancer, blonde girl, right? She's probably 20, 22, I don't know. So she goes on Jimmy Kimmel or Fallon, one of the Jimmys, I don't know.
Jimmy's.
And like they did like this whole skit where like it was kind of funny. Like she's doing her dancing, and then he kind of does it with her, and they're kind of it's cute and funny. And then like so she's she's huge. She's on late night TV, but then everyone's like, those aren't your dances. And she's like, well, I didn't say they were. Yeah, well, you didn't, but you didn't say whose they were. So that's the thing. Like, hey, I'm doing these dances and they were from this person, and I'm going to bring her on and dance with, like, that awareness. But that's not the culture we live in. And so people are just like, well, why should I do that? I have an opportunity to go on, it's like, yeah, right. Take care of, but
I have a question for you, actually. I have a question for you. But first, Jay's fan brings up Pat Boone. That's a whole nother story. Yes. He brought up Tutti Frutti and stuff. Yes, Pat Boone is a whole other story. And not talking about his daughter, Debbie, with her big song, You Light My Life. That song was everywhere, folks. Ooh, Light My Life was everywhere. But yes, Pat Boone, maybe we'll get to that in a second. But that was a question for a homeboy here. But that's one good appropriation, stealing, that's all, yeah. Jared, so do you think, because what years were you a teenager?
Well, I turned 13 in 86, so I guess it'd be 86 to 92.
Okay, so I was a teenager I turned 13 in 82.
Okay,
I was a teenager from 82 to 89. I turned 20 in 89, so beginning of middle of 89. So okay, so we're not that far off. Again, still teenager wise. Do you think? Yeah, actually, not that far off. Yes, we're still thinking. And we're both Gen X, so that's still the same thing. Do you think we were more aware back then than teenagers today? I feel like we were. Like, we knew what was going on out there. Like, we knew, I think. I mean, more so than the ones say, or do you think no? It's just all teenagers are, I don't know. I feel like my people were aware of what was going on.
It's hard to, I don't know.
Were you more aware?
It's hard to judge because I know now, like what I know now, it's easy for me to go, oh yeah, like what I know now, I knew then, but I didn't know then. But I think, and I've talked to a couple of friends of, not that I had very many friends of color back then, but a handful, and they're like, dude, give yourself more credit, like around music at least. Like you knew it was up, not only music taste and, oh, like, here, have you heard of this band? Have you heard of that band? Like any, 7th grader, 9th grader, wants to, but I think, I don't know. That's a hard one. I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry, Beautiful Ashes, you are fired. She said, You Light My Life was the #1 song when I was born. You're fired. Okay. I can't remember the song when it came out, so you're fired. No, but it's an interesting question to ask you, because I know you know what you know now, but so you don't think you can look back and go, I didn't know that much, or I did know some stuff. I'm just more aware now. I don't know. That's
so it's interesting because I think I've shared this on this show before. When I was 17, I discovered a few old blues albums in my mom's record collection. And up until that point, I went through my new wave stage, right, in 91X, which of Southern California. And then I got into kind of more classic rock, Zeppelin, Stones, and, that kind of stuff. And, and I was given that I was pretty, pretty knowledgeable about music for a 16, 17-year-old kid. But then when I discovered these old blues guys, I'm like, wait a second. I liked it. I was like, ooh, this is cool. But then they were almost always, not all, but almost all Black.
Mhm.
And almost everything that I had been listening to was white. I mean, so if you think of the bands that I was like, New Order, white, Echo and the Bunnymen, white, The Clash, white,
I have a question. No, that's another question for you. We're gonna break this down for a second. It's gonna be all about Jared Karol for a moment. It's our show, Dory. What? No, because I'm seriously really curious because the 80s and even the early 90s were very diverse in music. I always felt like our generation, we were allowed to like Madonna and Megadeth. We were allowed to like The Clash and Culture Club. Like, I feel like we were, but I mean, even if you, so with you, I'm just kind of curious that you didn't listen to any of those other artists at all. Like just said, I love New Order. I mean, Blue Monday's my favorite songs of all time. I mean, I know
awesome.
it's, but you know what I mean? I'm like just wondering. I mean,
I didn't listen to with the intentionality that I have now and I have had for 20 plus years around like, I mean, I don't go like, I'm going to listen to this artist because he's,
I know,
but like African music, I mean, Fela Kuti, right? Reggae. I mean, shit, I have 60 reggae albums that are, probably all Black, right? Like, blues, I have dozens of, so like, and then as I was saying earlier, like once I started to listen to him, I was interested in the history of it. So I started to read and learn about it. And then that's a lot of what I know now, at least initially, was learned through like reading these old music biographies of jazz people and blues people. And then it's like, oh, and I knew generally my history, like any kid from the 80s who wasn't really taught the details, generally there was slavery and then this and that, but I didn't know some of the specifics. So, but during like when I was 13, 14, 15 in the mid 80s, I can't say that I was aware. I'd like to say that I was aware. I can say now that I'm aware and I can place back onto me 35 years ago, but I can't say I was like conscious of that, at that time. I wish I was.
For me, it was just a no-brainer. I mean,
well, you're Black. But that's the thing. You grew up. I think you were Black when you were a kid, right?
I'm not sure. I gotta look backwards. You remember, I'm 55% white in my DNA, so I don't know what's going on.
Okay.
Maybe I was Puerto Rican back then. I don't know what was happening back then. Yes,
that's the thing. I mean, I think that illustrates the whole thing. Like, I was a white kid, growing up listening to music.
But you were in San Diego. You weren't in like Alabama. I mean, it's so hard for me to understand that. Like, it's just hard for me to, like, I have to accept it. Obviously, it's your life, but like, I was like, but no, I'm like, but it was that time. So I feel like music did separate again later. It was like this R&B, this is dance, this is. I feel like it did like later in the '90s kind of start. These are the boy bands. These are like. But I feel like I feel like our time period was like very mixed.
But I didn't listen to a lot of like. I mean, I didn't listen to any reggae back then. I didn't listen to a lot of funk and soul and
really okay.
Yeah, it just wasn't my thing. And even today, I don't listen to a ton of that. I listen to like more new stuff, like new soul and like new, like I like the house and trip hop stuff and like some of that stuff. But I still don't really listen. I mean, I appreciate it, but I'm not listening on a regular basis to Stevie Wonder or I'm no shade or anything. Now I have gotten back into because what I did start to get into in high school, so this is like maybe the exception, was like the native tongues hip hop stuff. So like Tribe Called Quest, Diggable Planets, a little bit later the Fugees. Like I actually genuinely was into that at in the very late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I remember going to Low End Theory came out like the day after I started college.
Okay.
Actually, the same day that Nirvana Nevermind came out.
And both very good albums. Yeah, both very good. All three very good albums. Yes.
So that was just. But also, my mom grew up in the 60s and early 70s, and she was kind of a hippie, and she was decently musically knowledgeable. So I got some of that, but she was also, as we've talked about before, pretty racist and pretty,
But I just learned something new. For me, I'm just like, because I feel like that a lot of my colleagues and we're like, we know all the songs, whether you were into them or not. You kind of like, oh, Two of Hearts by Stacey Q mixed with, like I said, New Order's Blue Monday, or like, or, or even, like I said, there was like Def Leppard. We know the songs they're played all the time. You may not have been a Def Leppard fan, you may not have gone to the concert, but I was like, well, you knew they were next to your Eurythmics. Like you knew who they were.
I knew Prince and Michael Jackson, and I was a big fan of Tracy Chapman even in high school when she came out. It wasn't like cool to, my friend and I we almost went to see her and Bobby McFerrin. I still am. I'm a huge fan of Bobby McFerrin. Like, so there were some except that was a little later, like late '80s, early '90s. But yeah, in like when I was middle school, it was all new wave and derivations of it.
No, I have to accept it.
Other than the band Living Color, I can't think of any of them that were black actually.
So funny. I learned something. I know it's more not even so much about you, but just more about that time period. It just felt like music because MTV. It was just everything was coming together where it was just like you can hear this song with that song and this once they got on Racist, it just felt like they were playing Guns N' Roses next to Mary J. Blige. Like it was like it was no biggie.
You know who it just reminded me, you know who I did listen to? And I'd like to revisit them because I haven't listened to them for decades. Run DMC.
Oh, they're bomb. Oh yeah.
So like My Adidas and stuff. I remember having listened to that album.
For me, it was the first album, Rock. It was King of Rock. And when I heard Rock Box, because it was rock mixed with hip, we never heard it. I mean, the first rap thing I heard was hip and hop. I heard that song, Rapper's Delight. And then next thing I heard was Curtis Blow, These Are the Breaks, and then Blondie's Rapture. So when Rockbox came out and King of Rock came out, I was like, what is this? I was actually in New York visiting my family and heard it. Ran out to Sam Goody or whatever it was back then and grabbed me and got the album. And I was like, this is like amazing. But it was rock music mixed with this new thing that I was like, what are they doing? They're rhyming? I remember there's no name really. We were like, what is this? So I agree with you. Run DMC, yes, Run DMC are pioneers, obviously, for so many reasons.
Yeah.
But that's funny you say that. But for me, it was the first album. And I was like, what is this? I couldn't get enough of it. And so it's been gospel music, yes, is another thing too. Gospel Christian music. For me, it was DC Talk. I've talked about it on the show before. They were the first rap sung Christian artists that went huge. Now it's Toby Mac. He's separate. He does stuff now or whatever. The other guys with another big group. But rap. That's before Kirk Franklin came out. That was all before that. The Winans and before that. So like there's all these genres that I just feel like race really shouldn't. It should matter. It shouldn't matter. It should matter in terms of where something comes from, but in terms of the listener, you should just if it sound good to you. Sound good to you, but just know that a lot of music came from Black folks. Sorry, I mean, it's just when you go back in history and they say who did the first this, it just happened. I mean, it gets erased. That goes to erasure and gaslighting. Trust me, rock music isn't white music, folks. It just happened to morph into that realm. It was Black folks, rock and roll, rhythm and blues, it was all country. It was Black people, folks.
Well, even the idea of like polyrhythms, which was an African thing. The white Europeans and the classical, they didn't like that polyrhythmic stuff. Like, just stay to the beat. And so, so then you have like, country and then later, it's good music, like Carter Family, I love it, like, but it's pretty straight. Right.
My friends were like, you like bluegrass? I go, yeah, I love Alison Krauss and Union Station and California Chocolate Drops and Trampled by Turtles. I love bluegrass. I love that stuff. It's fast picking music. It's like you just get to go to town. I go to town, Jared. I love it. I love it. I mean, like, but it's like they think for a while things were done a certain way. So when Carolina Chocolate Drops came out, the new jig or whatever it's called, their first album came out, people was like, James, who are you? I said, they're Black. They're like, they're Black. And they play bluegrass. I'm like, yeah, they get the jugs out. I'm like, do you know what? You know where it came from? Like the slaves started that stuff. Like that was like
the banjo is from Africa. Like it's an African,
Hello? Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that album is awesome, by the way. With what's the she does that rap song. Oh shit, we listen to it all the time. My son loves it.
it's a good
Oh god, it'll come to me.
Yeah.
Maybe after the show, but yeah, good stuff.
So people forget, but they're like, they're black. I'm like, well, yeah, they're black. I mean, that's just, people forget that stuff, that we have permeated all types of music. And it's for the world. It's not just for us, it's for the world. And so I always say, when it comes to this racism stuff and racism, and I just say, and like I said, when I was growing up, I told the show before, there was the black section. I had to go to the black section of Tower Records. There was pop over here, rock, and it was black. And then later it was black and R&B. And I would find Tina Marie in the black section. They thought she was black. She was light-skinned black. She was in the black section. Tom Tom Club in the black section. Madonna's first stuff was in the black section because it was because they sounded like, they called it N-word music, as they called it back then. But this was in the 70s and 80s. So I'm not even talking the 50s or anything. We're talking like the 70s and 80s at a major chain like Tower Records, where a section was called black. And all the black artists were over there. It was like,
realize, like, wait a second, these are white artists, but they sound black, so we're going to put them in black. But if there's too many of them, is it really black? Oh no.
Well, that's what I said with the Hall & Notes, especially, and with Tina Marie. I mean, they were like, black folks love that Blue-Eyed Soul stuff. They love them. I thought Bob Skaggs was black. I'm sorry, folks, for a long time. He's a white guy from the Bay Area. I thought the guy who just passed away recently, Bobby Caldwell, who does What You Could Do for Love, What I Would Not Do, I thought he was black. When they showed his white ass dead, I was like, he's white? I think everybody was like, what, he's white? That song is a classic and was found in the black section. So I'm just saying that they didn't even bother to look at just like who these people were, but the music sounded so. Where was Jimi Hendrix? What's funny about that, he was in the black section too, even though he did rock music. Early Prince stuff was in the black section because, again, they went by color sometimes. It was like they put him in black. He was not in the. My mother had the Jimi Hendrix Experience album, Purple Haze and everything on it. I remember we had to go get another copy, and we had to go to the black section to go get it. Even though he's clearly rock, one of the best rock guitarists of all time, clearly, but he should be next to the Doors and to and always over here. No, he's in the black section. That's how crazy it was in a major city. I mean, I'm talking the backwoods of West Virginia.
Well, it's not like in the 20s and 30s when they had race records,
right.
Yeah.
It's just kind of crazy. So we got to end our show again. He and I could talk forever about this kind of stuff. I'm glad we did music today. There's something different. There was some plan. And I want to tell you guys, we have a new podcast. I put out the trailer and it got some nice buzz. So thank you. It's called A Black Guy and a White Guy Confront ... And then we do a different topic every week. So you guys, it's coming out this Friday morning. I'll be sharing it everywhere, but you can find it wherever you get your podcast. I got approved on everything, Jared. I mean, everything from Spreaker, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Podchaser, Apple, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Deezer, GeoSavvy, Castbox. I got it everywhere. So you cannot not find it. That's not a good sentence. Who cares? But it's a black guy, and I'm the white guy, he's the black guy, and we're confronting. Yes, Jared.
Yes, for this podcast, I've become the black guy, and James has become the white guy.
Yeah, we're Freaky Friday. We're switching.
Yeah.
But no, I'm very excited for you to hear it. We have some great topics, you guys, and it's really good. So let's make this a huge hit for us. I mean, promoting the F out of it. We're still doing this once a month. We're back at the end of July. But this is something where we actually take a specific thing and for about 20-25 minutes talk about it.
It's shorter. It's just a little kind of we don't go as deep into these rabbit holes as we do here, which is it's not good or bad. It's just different. Yeah. But I think we've recorded a couple already, and I've for one have really enjoyed them, and
me too.
I'm looking forward to hearing ourselves.
There's a theme song by James Lott Jr. I don't think he's heard it yet. Did I send it to you? I don't know if I sent it to you or not. I can't remember if I did. Did I? I think I did.
I don't know.
Well, you'll hear this. You'll hear it all put together. I edited it put together. We have a theme song for us.
Is it black music, James?
It's actually Asian. Just to throw it off. It's Asian music. That's what it is. That's pretty fun. That's pretty funny, Joe. I like that. But yeah, so we have that coming out. So you have another thing for to listen to. It's only audio. It's not video. So it's only audio. Much I say that. So that's why I say it's on all the audio. I got it approved everywhere. So just go there and check out. Hit that follow button on there. Follow us along. So you can do episodes. We recorded 4 episodes first so far. We're going to do 2 more coming up. So we have a bunch of little episodes for you, so you can listen to them and have a good time. Jared, where can they find you if they want to find you?
Probably best place is LinkedIn. Just search for my name, Jared Karol. I'm on there. And then a white guy confronting racism.com, which will actually redirect you to jaredkarol.com, which is where I kind of keep everything with my coaching and facilitating. Or yeah, that's probably the best place. Just reach out and say hello. I basically, as long as you send a message and say, you know, who you are and where you heard of me, I'm like, yeah, let's connect and, you know, shoot the shit. So I have long welcomed interaction, connection, community, and especially in these times of COVID and, you know, I guess we're now calling post-COVID. I love interaction. So yeah, reach out. Happy to talk, happy to chat. And thank you.
My LinkedIn was hacked, so I don't have a LinkedIn at the moment. I'm very pissed about that. So you see somebody named Sarah Park from South Korea contact you. It's not me. So I'm working on that right now. I'm very pissed. I have like 7 years of stuff gone. They erased my whole page. So I have to start a new page soon. So I'll be back on LinkedIn once it gets all settled. But yes, they screwed up my life. So I did that. So it's just whatever. But I'm everywhere else, folks. You can't miss me. We're all James Lott Jr. is sold at James Lott Jr. on all social media platforms, including TikTok and YouTube. Everywhere. Just follow me. We'll talk to you guys next time. I do have Mariah Carey's book. I have read it, Stephen. I do have